All right, 3, 2, 1, action.
Native Americans have been a really big part of our history for a long time, so why are they so largely forgotten? Native American stories are often left out of history lessons and disregarded. This is because Native Americans have lived on reservations, so they aren't as big a part of society. This leads to most of society forgetting about them and their culture. Most of the separation between Native Americans and the rest of society occurred after different wars and massacres. After Native Americans were driven out of their land by the government, they were forced to migrate somewhere else with little resources to live on. This was really difficult as they couldn't turn anywhere for help, they just had to provide for themselves. Now they are seen a lot less because they are confined to their own reservations to live. Throughout history, society has often fallen short of treating Native Americans with respect. Native Americans have also had many rights taken away as a result of many of the disputes with the government. One of the ways the government has taken away Native Americans' rights is when they were forced into resettlement and kicked out of their own lands. This shows how little rights Native Americans have and the poor treatment they've received throughout history. There are not many ways we can help in regards to Native American rights and injustices. However, it's good to get the community and the government involved in our efforts. The government controls the majority of Native Americans as they choose their rights and where they can live. Throughout this presentation, we're going to discuss the different injustices that Native Americans experience and how their lives have been affected by the government's choices. This includes where they can live, their resources they can use, and how they are in society.
We have to consider that the Native Americans that currently live on reservations more than likely have ancestors that have lived on that land for hundreds of years. They also have sacred land that is protected by national parks and monuments, but some of the time their land has not been protected due to the large reduction of size of the land which they once may have owned. We also must consider what policies and laws are in place concerning Native American land, most specifically those regarding national parks and monuments, and reservations, like Proclamation 9558, which created Bears Ears National Monument, are the efforts of Ashley National Forest to work with tribes whose lands are protected by the forest to ensure that sacred places to them within the park are preserved. This is important to factor in because we need to know how we can add to these policies in a positive and effective way. However, there are also many laws set in place that endanger important land, such as the Utah Public Lands Initiative Act, which threatens thousands of acres of Ute territory, or the Lake Powell Pipeline, which prevents the Ute Indian tribe from exercising its federal Indian reserved water rights. In order to make a change or help the tribes affected by these situations, we must realize how these affect them negatively. Policy change can also be difficult for the Native Americans to make themselves because of many efforts to try and make it more difficult for Native Americans and Indigenous people to vote. It is much harder for those who are Native American, have Native ancestors, or cultural ties to create this kind of change for themselves because there is policy in place that undermines this say that they could have on the land surrounding the areas they occupy. We must be aware of this fact and take it into consideration when taking action.
Oh gosh. Sorry, I need to throw. How fast do I need to make it?
About 2 minutes. So.
Okay, sorry, just cut this out.
Let's just say, yeah. Let's say.
Where's the picture?
Oh, there you go. Just cut that out too. 3, 2, 1, go.
There are many potential stakeholders that could be impacted by these issues. For example, many different Native tribes that have coexisted for centuries on the Utah terrain tend to be the most affected. As the years go by, it seems that the Native Americans are becoming stripped of their land more and more for industrial, economic, tourism purposes, and more. The Ute tribe has had a variety of
Encounters.
Let's redo it.
Kind of. Just start from the beginning.
You don't have to start from the beginning.
Oh, true. The next slide. Just go.
So start that one over, okay?
Okay, that's good.
Seconds.
Sorry, guys.
Second slide. 3, 2, 1, go.
The Ute tribe has had a variety of encounters with people who have attempted to kick them out of their own homes and territory. They are mainly impacted because they are losing their home and security out of their own will since it is forced upon them. It is unethical for mankind to take away things that are not their own. Landowners could especially play a special role in having power to make impactful decisions. Whether the landowner is an American or Native American, they have the right to have security over their own property. Therefore, if people were attempting to push natives from their land, they have the security of not having to withdraw unless desired to. Government officials over a state are some of the most powerful figures that can put things to action to cause a change. Some support the modernization of the world and think that trying to renovate and industrialize the country and valleys are necessary for a better economy. Although others may support those native tribes that live accustomed to their own desires, beliefs, values, and cultures. The stances government officials decide to take, whether it be taking away land, gaining more power, trying to make a change in the environment, and more, is very powerful within the situation. Lastly, citizens of Utah can have a crazy impact on the impacts being brought upon Indigenous people. We can choose to stand up and fight for the protection and preservation of these lands that were preserved and contained by the previous tribes. We can choose to make a change, speak up, protest, make plans, and more to increase the likelihood of equality and fairness of ownership. Citizens can also decide if they choose to argue against those who are supporting Native Americans. Depending on the situation, it depends on the community's involvement and views on each issue and how they go about their feelings.
Yay, Maddie!
Based action. We needed to win over the hearts of the community and teach them the wrongdoings of the past and how we can better respect Native American culture. We could teach people what we are currently doing wrong, for example, keeping arrowheads that we find around former Native American lands. We should also put pressure on local governments to better respect Native American land and give them better lands and compensate them for their losses, to rise up for their current living status. Solution: give their lands back. 160 of the 380 indigenous populations that were studied have no federal or state recognized land, and those who possess territory have an average of only 2.6% of the size of their original tribal lands. We should put pressure on courts to give all indigenous land and increase their lands by at least another 5%. We should make an online petition. 3, 2, 1. Fund Native American-based charities. We can make a GoFundMe page to donate to Native American-based charities and national parks to better help their communities. Fund scholarships that support easier access to education within their communities as well. We can also throw a peaceful protest to argue for better protections and rights against Native American lands. A peaceful protest would show politicians what issues the public is focused on and wants to change. Being quiet on this issue will show ignorance, and we should be vocal about how we feel, and we want to incite change on a political level.
Do your part. Do your small part, because that is all you can control. Don't think that you are not enough to make a change. For one person, it can be very hard to make a huge difference, but if a lot of people come together, all doing their small part, then big changes can happen. These changes can greatly benefit the indigenous people of our country. Try to raise awareness. Although Americans are more informed and less ignorant, Although Americans are more informed and less ignorant about indigenous peoples than they used to be, due to the geographical separation between the indigenous people and the rest of the country, there are still a ton of stereotypes floating around about indigenous people. Just spreading awareness and changing those ideas can eventually come close to erasing those misconceptions and stereotypes from American society. Respect native lands. The government most likely will not want to give away the lands they already own, so it may be hard to get the government to give back native lands. So the best we can do is respect the little bit of land the indigenous people still have for themselves. We can do this by making sure to keep areas clean when we are on these lands. Donate to Native American relief. Many of the stereotypes surrounding natives are very hard to escape because of the lack of money these people have. They grow up in cultures where alcohol abuse is common and they have no support. Helping fund support groups could go a long way. Also, funding Native American charities such as the Native American Heritage Association or the Native American Rights Fund can really help better the lives of these indigenous people. Help build up Native societies. Humanitarian work can go very far in helping Native societies. One thing that heavily contributes to the amount of drug and alcohol abuse among Natives is the bleak future. They have nothing to look forward to, so these people try to drink or smoke the day away to survive. If we tried our best to build up their society, we can help contribute to a brighter foreseeable future. With a brighter future, the Natives may be able to build on their society and have a better... Gosh, I freaking can't read. I'm sounding stupid. Okay. Help build up Native societies. Humanitarian work can go very far in helping Native societies. One thing that heavily contributes to the amount of drug and alcohol abuse among Natives is the bleak future. They have nothing to look forward to, so people try to drink or smoke the day away to survive. If we try our best to build up their society, we can contribute to a brighter foreseeable future. With this brighter future, the Natives may be able to build a greater society and do better in the future than they have been in the past. Good enough.